Hello, makers. My name is Jen, and I am the host of the Making Conversation podcast, a podcast where we celebrate making of all kinds, but especially fiber arts. Do you want to say something to everyone? Oh, thank you. Oh, do you want to welcome everyone to the podcast? No? Okay. What about you? No? Well, I've had the absolute pleasure of interviewing so many amazing people, makers, fiber artists on this podcast. And today it's my turn. We're going to dive into my crafting journey, a few other things about myself, and I also asked some of my awesome maker friends to send in questions. So let's get to it. For everyone watching, I want to know, what are you working on while you're watching? I like to think of this podcast as kind of like a really fun maker meetup in a way where you can sit and work on a project and you're still kind of hanging out with people without hanging out with people. One of the things I love is when people send me photos of where they're watching the podcast. On their television, they're streaming from YouTube on there. I've received photos of people crafting while they're traveling and they're watching it on their phone or on their iPad, and it just really makes me happy. As we start every podcast episode, I'm going to talk about my own personal maker journey. When it comes to knitting, I learned how to knit from an ex's mom. This was maybe about 20 years ago. I don't remember the exact timing, but she really enjoyed knitting. And one day she asked if I wanted to learn how. I was really into it. It's probably a little bit of the ADHD hyperfocus, but we'll get more into that later. I definitely tried to just make as much as I could, except clothing items. So it took me quite a while to knit my first top. And I think that I was knitting on and off for about 10 years before I actually sat down and knit my first top. So anytime that I hear somebody has picked up the needles and they're making a sweater or a tee for their first project, my mind is absolutely blown. As I've spoken with many makers, a lot of their journeys start off with my grandma taught me or my mom taught me. I didn't have that. However, a few years ago, when my father passed away, I sat down with my mom and we were looking through photos of my father and my Nona and my Nono. And my mom said, "Oh my gosh, I think that your Nona knit that sweater for you." And then we pulled out another photo and it was a Polaroid of me and my mom. I was a very young child. And she goes, "Oh, I think that Nona knit those sweaters for us." And they were these beautiful yellow sweaters. And then there's the next photo. It was me and my dad, and he also had the same sweater on that we did. It was this full circle moment that really kind of confirmed this feeling that I have that this thing that we love and this craft that we do, it's kind of in our blood, right? I didn't remember or really have an idea that my Nona was a knitter, but I ended up finding my way to it anyways, which is kind of special. Like I said, I didn't really start knitting sweaters or tops for quite a while. Once I did, I realized knitting, crochet, whatever it is, fiber arts, it can be scary at times because you're making this big thing, right? You're making something that you're going to put on your body. You're taking hours and hours to do it. And what if you mess up? What if you make a mistake and you can't fix it? You can always fix things, even if it means starting over. But it is really the best way to learn is to make mistakes, right? The first time that I realized what tinking was, and I didn't learn the term for a very long time after, but figuring out how to knit in reverse to fix a mistake, it was like mind blowing. I wouldn't have figured that out if I hadn't made a mistake at that point. So I'm here to say, if you are scared of doing something, you're always going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes to this day. I'm currently knitting a pair of socks right now, and the instructions of turning of the heel on this specific project is way different than any other heel turning I've ever done. And I kept messing up and having to go back. I finally put in a lifeline, which is saved me so much time in the end. But I think I had to redo it like 4 or 5 times. And now granted, it's a sock, it's a heel, so it didn't take that long to like pull it back and then redo it. But for some reason, I couldn't just get it. Possibly because I'm rewatching The Last of Us with my partner, and maybe some counting was off due to concentrating on what was happening on the TV. But I finally got there. That's just a little piece of advice for anyone who is a little bit scared to do something hard with their fiber arts. As I was learning, I did not really have YouTube as a resource. There were a few videos that were up on YouTube at that time. They were all like shot in horrible light and it was grainy and all of that. So it wasn't ever really my first go-to, but I did pick up the book Stitch and Bitch, which I don't know. I'm about to be 43. So maybe people around that age range that knit or, have knitted in the past can relate. But I had that book with me constantly. It was like my version of the Bible for a very long time. I still have it to this day. It's sitting on my shelf. I haven't picked it up for quite a while as I am so thankful for all of the knitting tutorials on YouTube. But I will say that book, definitely, I learned so much from that book. While knitting is a very big part of my life, I also have other hobbies. Shocking. I'm a big music fan. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, I got really into emo music and punk and pop punk and that kind of genre. One of the people that I asked to submit a question does get into that, so we'll talk more about it in a little bit. But I also am growing my vinyl collection. So for a very long time, I wanted to have a really awesome vinyl collection. But every single time that I would see a friend move with their vinyl collection and have to move all of those records, I was like, moving is already stressful. I'm going to have a very small vinyl collection. And then once I land in a spot where I'm probably not going to move for a long time, then that's when I'm going to start building it. I live in Seattle, Washington, and I've lived here for, oh gosh, my 21st year in Seattle just happened. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and kind of once I started learning who I was as a person, I didn't really connect with the city at that point. So, my really good friend at the time had visited Seattle and came back and was like, oh my God, this city is amazing. The art, the food, the culture, the music, it's just so great. And it's so beautiful. Everything is green and the weather is beautiful. And she's like, I think I'm going to move there. And so I thought about it for 2 seconds. And then I was like, would it be weird if I also moved there too? There was just something that was like calling me to push for this. And now, when I say push for this, I mean, I very intentionally sat down and said, okay, Jen, if this is easy, it's meant to be. If it's not easy, it's not meant to be. So I started my journey of figuring out how to move to Seattle. I very quickly sold my car, like within a week. A week after that, I think, I found a job. I found an apartment who even like the apartment manager was like, normally I'd like to meet you in person, but you seem like you have it together. And so I found an apartment. I hadn't even seen it in real life. It just all came together. And shortly after that, I packed up a car that was not mine. It was another person who was also moving to Seattle at the time. And we drove up to Seattle. I remember turning that corner on I-5. If you've ever driven I-5 north from south of Seattle up into Seattle, you know that view that I'm talking about, where you turn a corner and it's just downtown, the city with just the lights and the buildings and the water, and you can see the Space Needle. And it just felt like home from that moment. I feel so fortunate that I took that step because I think back And I trusted my gut so much. And it took me so many places that I probably would not have had certain opportunities if I would have stayed in Phoenix. So I'm so grateful to my younger self for taking that very big risk of deciding just to do it, especially if it was easy. And boy, was it easy. It was way easier than I ever thought it would be. As some of you probably know, I was the head of marketing for Making for about 3.5 years. Before that, I worked in a few different marketing jobs. So let me tell you a little bit of how I got into marketing and how I made it to where I'm at right now. When I first moved here, my very first job was at a salon and spa. There were some things that happened, and I had to find a job pretty quickly because my position was about to be cut. It had nothing to do with my performance, I will assure you. I was very, very good at being a front desk person at this salon, but I needed to move quickly. I found a listing for the Vance Hotel, which is now Hotel Max. So I started working at the front desk, worked my way up to front desk manager, and then the wonderful general manager there was like, hey, you're really good at what you do, but let's like expand your horizons a little bit in hospitality. I was on the sales and marketing team, and I was the entertainment sales manager. So what that meant was if there was bands coming into town, the goal was to get them to stay at the hotel. So that was pretty cool. I got to meet some very awesome artists. I actually checked Imogen Heap into the hotel once. Can confirm she is very tall, very nice. The president of this hotel chain comes to me one day and says, hey, Jen, I think we should try this social media thing. Would you be interested in like starting that out? You're the creative one. Let's see how this goes. This was even pre-Instagram, back when Twitter was not a dumpster fire that it is today. So that is where I really got started in marketing. And a lot of it was just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what worked. It was fun, it was creative. I got to host a lot of events, which was pretty cool. And I really was able to jump in on social media management before it really was even a thing. I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. And the president of the company saw something in me that took me to where I am today. Somebody who had followed us on social media and had come to a couple of events emailed me and said, hey, would you be interested in coming to work at this startup? Now, I didn't, I was like, startup? I'm not a startup chaser. Had never worked at a startup before. And she said, it's this company called Uber. Well, Uber had only been launched in San Francisco at that point. And then by the time I started at Uber, New York had launched. So Seattle was the third city to launch at Uber, and I was employee 31 of the whole thing since the beginning. So let's just say I learned a lot while working at Uber. I was there for about 5.5 years. One of the things that I truly loved about that time at Uber was we got to be so creative because we were trying to market this product that was like so new, right? You push a button on your phone and a car picks you up and takes you somewhere and then drops you off, and you don't have to give them a card or cash or anything. It was a very exciting thing to be a part of. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity that I did, and I got to learn so many things. I have some stories from that time, but maybe that's for another podcast. Another thing that is a big part of my life is travel. Maybe that sounds cliche, but it's true. Most of my like really close friends don't live in Seattle, so I get to hop around to New York and Austin and Portland and go see my family in Phoenix. And I'm hoping that soon a little bit more international travel will come my way. But I do really enjoy getting on a plane and going to places, even places that I've been to, and just revisiting and getting to know cities really well. I like to ask people this. If you had to choose your very last meal, what would it be? Mine would be a giant bean and cheese burrito covered in hot sauce. Like it looks like it's bleeding. That kind of covered in hot sauce, just like slathered all over it. Cholula or Tapatio, and a really nice bottle of natural wine. That would be mine. What is yours? Tell me in the comments. I want to know, if you had to choose one last meal, what would it be? When I'm knitting, one of my favorite things to do is watching a show with a glass of wine. As I mentioned, a good glass of natural wine. Right now, like I said, I am rewatching season 1 of The Last of Us. My partner, Daniel, who is also a very big part of my life and a very amazing human, he had never seen it before. And we are just devouring it. It's been choice of words. It's been so much fun to rewatch season 1. Pedro Pascal, I love you. Can we be best friends? If you're watching, probably not. I don't think that you do any sort of fiber arts, but hit me up. Love a good episode of Drag Race. I'm also a huge Bravo person. Where are my Real Housewives fans out there? Are you there? I love Salt Lake City. Now, when I say love, it's like a disaster, but it's a beautiful disaster. Orange County, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. The new New York, I like enough to watch. I'll just leave it there. Another big part of my life, sitting right next to me, Marcelo and Bennie, which this is actually a part of a question that's coming up later, so we're going to hold off from that. But I love them so much. They're my sweet little babies. Oh, so fluffy. Got the fluffiest neck. Back to my partner, Daniel, one of the most kind and loving people in this world. Last year, I started casually dating, and I was like, I'm going to be single for a long time, but I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to have fun and date. And then my very first date after being on a dating app was Daniel. And I truly think that the universe was like, hey, you've both been through some things, and here you are, pushing you together. I have honestly never felt so seen or loved or understood. I haven't ever had this much fun with somebody else, and it's really cool to be in love with your best friend. I have interviewed so many people on this podcast. I have traveled to fiber arts shows around the world, actually. If you've been paying attention at all, I was asked to go take the podcast to do some interviews at Barcelona Knits, Flock Fiber Festival here in Seattle, Sacred Sheep in Portland, and also I did some interviewing at Vogue Knitting Live as well a few years ago. So I asked a few of my friends that I have interviewed if they had questions for me. So let's get into that. So we're going to start off with a question from Aimée from Bien Aimée. I've known Aimée for a few years, and she's become such a dear friend. I love seeing everything that she does, and when we get to be in the same place and catch up, it's always so wonderful. So here's Amy's question.
Hey Jen, I did not forget about you, and thank you for extending me an extra day. It's been crazy because we are in full pop-up prep. My pop-up shop's opening next week. But anyways, I wanted to ask you 2 questions, and they're the 2 questions that popped into my mind after you had made your request for questions. And so the first one is, what are your goals for the next 5 years? I know that's kind of a hard question, and I actually ask myself this question all the time, and so I'm just curious to see how someone else would answer this. And this can be very large subject. It can be knitting related, life related, anything related. So just what are your goals for the next 5 years? And then the second question I wanted to ask you, because I get really inspired by seeing you just doing things, like you share a lot on social media, and I want to know, how do you find the motivation to do? Because sometimes, like, I always ask myself, like, how am I going to get out the door today and things like that, and how am I going to get this done? And I just want to know, like, what is your motivation to do the things that you do? And this can be related to knitting, working out. Actually, girl, I want to talk to you about working out. Like, how do you get motivated? to keep working out, because it's always super inspiring to see you doing what you do. And then I'm like, when I think about it for myself, I'm like, Anyways, voila, my 2 questions for you. I hope that they are arriving to you in time for your project, and I look forward to watching this episode of your podcast. I hope to see you soon. I miss you. Bye.
Oh, I miss you too, Aimée. I wish it was easier to see each other. Like, snap of a finger, where are we at with teleportation? These questions are big. I think when it comes to what my goal is for the next 5 years, it's like when RuPaul asked this of one of the queens in the last season, Jules Sparkles, if you've been paying attention. She was like, well, I don't really know. My goal is to get here. As you know, the making app sunsetted last year. I decided I was going to take a couple of months and just take time off. I had not ever taken time off before between jobs, except for maybe a few days to a week, if that. And so I was like, okay, I'm in a place where I can do this, and I'm just going to relax and enjoy life and take some time. Then, of course, once I decided it was time for me to start looking for a job, a lot of people within the marketing space got laid off. If you work in marketing and you're looking for a job, you understand the struggle is real. A lot of very qualified and talented people are looking for positions. But I think one of my biggest goals is to find a marketing leadership role and land in a place where I feel passionate about what the company is doing, a place that aligns with my values, and a place where I feel like I can make a difference. I talked a little bit about my job history, which I'm just now realizing I didn't finish that part. ADHD. Again, we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. I worked at Uber for a while. I worked at a fintech startup, at an agency in Seattle, and then I worked at Making. And all of those places, I either got to be really creative, or the values aligned, or the people that I worked with were just very passionate and enjoyed what they did. And that is a really big goal of mine, is to land at my next place and be really excited about what I'm doing. Now, when it comes to other things in my life, of course, I want to continue working on myself. I go to therapy now every other week. After learning I had ADHD, it was one of those things where, like, the lights just came on. I completely understood how my brain worked. I think that that was such a huge part of my personal growth, was to realize why my brain worked how it did. And I was able to really dive in and do even more work on myself that actually made a difference. I think one of my travel goals is to make it to Trieste. It's in Italy, in case you didn't know. Hold on. Ooh, I can show you. See where the heart is on the boot? Right there. That's Trieste. That's where my dad was born. After he returned to Italy, that is where he passed away. So I want to be able to go and visit him. Another travel goal is to go to Korea, because that is where Daniel was born, and I kind of want to get to know that culture a little bit better. I think when it comes to knitting for the next 5 years, my goal is to continue building parts of my wardrobe that I have created that can be more versatile. I think I've said this on the podcast before, but when I first started making sweaters and tops and more clothing things, I was very pulled into the new it things, the most popular sweaters, the most popular tops. And those weren't always like staple pieces in your wardrobe. So continuing to make items that I can just grab every day. The second question, how do I have the motivation to do? Well, going back to my ADHD, I think that that has a lot to do with it. I actually was scrolling through Instagram the other day and came upon this post. The account is Super Skills ADHD. The front cover says, "What if your productivity was just a trauma response and ADHD made it invisible?" And I was like, oh my God, You never seemed like you had ADHD because you were too busy holding the whole damn world together. Turns out you don't need focus when fear is your main source of fuel. Whoo! Oh my goodness. Now, ADHD can show up differently in every single person, but I have definitely come to realize that part of the reason that probably no one ever thought that I had ADHD, if you watched the neurodivergence and crafting episode a few episodes back, you heard this whole story. But I was diagnosed at 40, and ADHD was never anything that actually ever came up in my life. No doctor when I was younger ever said, oh, maybe you have this. So it was kind of a shock when I was diagnosed, but it was also something that was like very affirming. But essentially, a lot of my push to do for a very long time was a mask, right? Because I didn't want to disappoint people. I didn't want to disappoint myself. And I just pushed to keep going. Now that I've been able to unlearn that a little bit, I do think that part of that is still within me and will always be there. But the most important part is that I now know what it is and I can call it out. I also just try and do things that I really enjoy. I think part of my ADHD is that hyper focus. And if I'm doing things that I enjoy, I will always want to do them, right? Now, of course, there are times where I have to do something and it's not something that I enjoy, but I just try and get it done. So I don't have to think about it anymore because that's the other part of ADHD is this guilt that you get when you just can't do. And so the other side of that coin is I allow myself grace when I am in the mode of I just can't do. One of my other favorite things and something that's a big part of my life is lifting weights. I have been on this fitness journey for, I think, almost 7 years now. Maybe it's 6. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And when you hear things from famous people like nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, or you're constantly bombarded with diet fads and foods that are supposedly good foods and bad foods, it can really become ingrained. And it did. I've always had body dysmorphia. I still do. That will be something that I'm continually unpacking and working on for the rest of my life. But one thing that I realized is movement was so good for my mental health that I knew that I needed to make it a part of what I prioritized in my life. A few years back, I was taking a bunch of these classes on ClassPass, which was an app. Is it still an app? I don't know. But I was doing a bunch of different things. I tried Pilates, I tried yoga. The thing that really stuck with me was lifting heavy weights. I enjoy the feeling of that so much. And my mental health has improved so much over time. I also know now that lifting weights is really important, especially as you get older. So I'm going to continue doing that. And when I don't feel like doing it, I try and give myself grace. But the thing that really helps, honestly, is I have a personal trainer. Her name is Rena. She's amazing. Hi, Rena. I don't know if you're watching this or not, but you're great. Uplift Fitness, Seattle, Washington. It's booked, it's in the calendar. I go twice a week. And then she also has put together a third day for me that I can do at home in my gym downstairs. Deadlifting heavy just feels so like I'm a badass, right? Like I just picked up and put down 165 pounds. It is really awesome. Last year in June, Rain City Fit, which is a local gym, I participated in their Pride deadlift party. The whole goal is for the participants to help raise money for some really awesome charities. And a lot of them are typically LGBTQ plus focused. And then we all get together and have a party in the street in front of the gym and just pick up and put down really, really heavy weights.
Freshman shuffle to get into your scuffle.
The motivation for me to do when it comes to working out is definitely linked to my mental health, though, and the fact that I feel like a badass when I am doing those things. Next question is from Vanessa Fleming, owner of Ocean Knits and Fibers. I did interview her at her shop. If you go back a couple of episodes, you can watch that one. I love Vanessa. She's just such a wonderful human. With your natural talent for fashion, have you ever considered designing a knit piece? And if so, what would your dream design be? Another person did ask about fashion, so I'm going to get more into that in a little bit. But I have never considered designing a knit piece for a few reasons. One, there's so many. Did you just squeak? Oh my goodness, are you so sleepy? Oh, he's a sleepy guy. Look at him. Do you want to say anything to your fans? Do you want to snuggle in? He's such a sweetie. We love Marcelo Eugene. Yeah. As I was saying, I have never thought about designing a knit piece. There are so many talented designers out there. When I have talked with Britt about designing and grading and all of that, my brain just goes blank. So if I were to be able to design something, I feel like I would want it to be like a really cute cropped cardigan, something that people could just throw on and enjoy. But yeah, I think I'll leave designing knitwear pieces to the people who are already doing it. My dog's little paw on my leg is so cute. Oh my God. Marcelo, you're so cute. Next question is from Rachel. Rachel is the owner of Ritual Dyes in Portland, Oregon, and runs, with a lot of help from very awesome people, Sacred Sheep in Portland, Oregon. So here's her question.
Hi, it's Rachel from Ritual Dyes, and my question is fashion related because I know that you and I both share a love for it. When you are project planning, are you picking projects just based solely on the fact that you love the design, or are you picking projects because you think they will fit seamlessly into your already established wardrobe?
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so I talked a little bit before about how I am trying to build more like everyday wear pieces into my hand knit wardrobe. I do want to touch on the fashion piece really quick though. When I turned 40, as bodies do, it changed. When that happened, I was trying to not allow myself to slip into a place that I'd been before and really started working on just body acceptance, not even body positivity, because that felt too far from what I needed at the time. So one of the things that happened was I was supposed to go to a wedding in Puerto Rico during the summer, and it was a formal wedding. I had no idea what to wear. My body had changed, so I didn't even really know what size I was at that point. And I just kind of wasn't feeling positive about a shopping experience around this wedding. I had received an email from Nordstrom saying, you can book an appointment with our personal stylists, do a shopping experience with them. It was maybe like a week before the wedding, and I was like, oh, I have to get this done. I have to figure out what I'm going to wear. I just emailed Nordstrom and I said, hey, can you please set me up with somebody? I need help. And that is when I met Colson, who is now one of my very close friends. And together we kind of just started going on this journey of how I started finding body neutrality and body positivity through fashion. You can look good at any body type, any body size, but if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. I ended up having to like basically redo my whole closet because of my new body size. And it really kind of got me into this space of understanding that I am beautiful no matter what size pants I'm wearing or what size dress I'm wearing. And it took me on this journey of not only finding love for what I looked like, which I hadn't felt in quite a while, even before the weight gain, but finding this love for fashion that I had never had and really seeing clothing in a different way, seeing it as more of an extension of my personality and who I am, and really being able to get creative. Because, as I said before, if anything allows my creativity to shine through, I'm there. So when it comes to picking knit patterns, I think that that's really why I'm trying to find things that are more basics or things that I can just grab. Like I just finished knitting a cropped cardigan that was in this really beautiful black yarn. And I will say I probably grab that the most these days. Not just because I just finished it, because it still needs buttons. Okay? There are buttonholes. There are no buttons. It's fine. We're working on it. But I think it's because it's something that I can throw on no matter what I'm wearing. And I made it and I get that cool feeling. But it goes with so many things in my closet. Now, obviously, there are times where I will make something that's a little bit brighter. But I mean, how could I not? How could I not make this? This yarn is Aimée, Bien Aimée. Beautiful. So soft. It feels so good. So that's another part of it, is if I find yarn that I'm like, I need to work with that, I will go in and look for patterns that have used that type of yarn before. And that will be part of my decision too. Thank you for sending that in, Rachel. Also, y'all, if you are in the Portland area, you need to go to Ritual Dye's movie nights. I really want to go, and I'm trying to figure out when I can be in Portland next for it. Okay, next we have Andrea, who is the knitting PT. I'm hearing her voice in my head right now. Jen, sit up straight. But I always hear a little voice of Andrea in the back of my head saying, are you putting your shoulders back while you're knitting? Do you need to reset your posture? Anyways, here's Andrea's question.
Hey Jen, my name is Andrea and I knit and sometimes crochet, I spin and I weave. And my question for you is, when did you become a capital K knitter or capital C crafter? But yeah, when did it become something that was a permanent part of your daily life? Thanks for answering. Can't wait to hear your answer.
So I want to say that this was a few years before 2020, which we all know what happened then. I started picking it up again because I realized the process of knitting allowed me to sit and relax and not feel guilty about it. The meditative process of doing the same thing over and over while I was still creating something gave me space to relax, but also continue to create, if that makes sense. That's when I became a capital K knitter or capital C crafter. Ever since then, it is very rare if I don't pick up my knitting in a day. Okay. We'll take a little podcast break for some tummy rubs. Yeah, that's good. My next question is from the one and only Nathan, who is the founder and owner of Lupin Threads. I just love his designs, his photography. So if you don't follow Lupin Threads, make sure that you do that, like right now. I'll wait. Okay, do you still find work to be done on the social level of knitting and continuing to create safe spaces for all? Oh boy, let me tell you. I think that there is always going to be a level of us as a community learning and growing and understanding that how things have always been done aren't always the best for everybody. I think that it really starts with checking our own internal biases. We all have them, whether we like it or not. Figuring out why they're there, what we can do to learn and understand why they are there in the first place. So, yes, I think that there is a lot that can be done, not only from the perspective of BIPOC makers feeling more included in all of the crafting spaces, but also including more crafts within this umbrella of fiber arts, right? For us to be more inclusive around including crochet and spinning and weaving into the conversation of fiber arts and being a maker is super important too. Also, continuing to address ableism within the maker community. I had a really wonderful conversation with Beth and Kira back in episode 166 about this, talking about how the world of crafting and making should be a space where everybody feels included. There are barriers, both visible and invisible, for makers with disabilities when it comes to yarn shops and how people can navigate them if they're in a chair, or using as inclusive language as possible when we are talking about our community. Thank you for the question, Nathan. Also, Nathan is hopefully going to be a guest on the podcast soon, so watch out for that episode. My friend Tina also submitted a question, so here we go.
My name is Tina. I'm a soft goods product developer, a knitting pattern designer, and an overall maker of all things. My question is, what has been the most rewarding about being a part of an online making community? And as a bonus, what is your favorite emo band as a fellow elder emo myself?
I find that being a part of an online maker community means that I can meet and interact with so many different people around the world that maybe I would not have a chance to know in real life. It's funny that Tina sent in this question because Tina is one of those people that I've followed long enough and we've chatted back and forth about things. And she's been a guest on the podcast to where every time I realize I've never met Tina in real life, I'm like, what? It feels like we've met. And I think that that's the beauty of an online community is there's this peek into people's lives, however much they want to share. And you kind of get to know people on a different level than just seeing a photo online of something that they made. So I think that's my favorite part about being in an online maker community. You kind of get to know people, not only, what they're making, but what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, what kind of music they like, etc. And then the follow-up question leads to that. What is your favorite emo band? Okay. This one is really, really difficult for me. I call myself an elder emo. I enjoy emo from like the late 90s, early 2000s. So we're talking bands like Braid, Mineral, early Death Cab for Cutie, early Jimmy Eat World. I love the band The Anniversary, Hey Mercedes, The Promise Ring, Piebald. And then I think it's more considered not screamo and not hardcore, but like Refused, International Noise Conspiracy, The Blood Brothers, Jawbreaker, lots of bands that came from late 90s, early 2000s. One of my best friends, Val, who I've mentioned on the podcast, she also knits and we like to craft together all the time and drink wine and hang out. And she's just amazing. We are going to the Best Friends Forever Festival in Vegas, and that is in October. So if you're going to that, let me know, because maybe we can have a little craft night together. Thank you, Tina. I hope we get to meet in real life one day. Reshma is the owner and founder of Hello Lavender. If you like fun stitch markers and things of that sort, definitely go check out Hello Lavender. She asked 2 questions. 1, how many whips do you have currently? Great question. Here's my honest answer. Right now, I'm currently working on a pair of socks. The pattern is called Herding Cats Socks. The yarn is from an amazing shop in Ohio, Dye Mad Yarns. Talk about a business that really uses their platform for good. I really appreciate what Dye Mad Yarns does and everything that they stand for. I also have a tank that is in my pile that I need to do I-cord finishing on. I have been trying so hard to get better at finishing my projects with the finishing. Now, I know that I mentioned a cardigan before that doesn't have buttons yet. That doesn't count. Okay, it counts. But I promise I will eventually put buttons on it. I just need to find the right ones. So hold me to it, okay? One other whip that I don't currently have, but I really want to start working on, I have a vest that is made with Bien Aimée Cory confetti. I don't like the fit of it anymore. So I want to rip it out and start over in a different size. And maybe make a few adjustments to the length too. So I have a feeling that might be my next project. The thought of ripping out a project, though, that you worked so many hours on kind of makes me sad. But I also know that I'm not going to reach for it as much if I don't redo it. I think that's going to be the next thing that I work on. The other question is, what is your favorite sandwich? This is a very good question because sandwiches are very important. We love sandwiches. There is a place called Cafe Flora here in Seattle, down the hill in Madison Park. Oh my gosh. It is a vegetarian French dip. There are times where I will just randomly get a craving for this sandwich and I literally just have to go. Like the au jus, oh my God. I don't even know. I mean, and it's all vegetarian. It is a vegetarian restaurant. It's a vegetarian au jus. It's made with mushrooms, portobello mushrooms. Oh my God. Now I want that one. Well, now I'm hungry. Thanks for the question, Reshma. The next question is from my dear friend Carrie. Carrie, I actually was roommates with in Phoenix when we were like 19 years old. And now Carrie lives in West Seattle, being friends, living life, and then coming back together and still being like really good friends with this person. So she's one of my besties. Love her. She also is a fantastic artist. I love seeing when people find their thing and how it changes their life and their perspectives. Carrie's picked up painting and she is fantastic. If you want to go check her out, what do you find to be unique about making communities that you don't think you can easily find in other communities? All of us have this beautiful thing that we do in different mediums, but we create, and it gives us this connection when you're creating something and it takes you hours and it's this slow process. And knowing that somebody else in the maker community also went through that, no matter the medium. I think that there's just something special about that. Last but not least, Jenny from Spin Cycle Yarns. You have seen Jenny if you follow Spin Cycle on Instagram. Jenny makes a lot of their content and also works at the Spin Cycle shop. Jenny says, no specific question, but I would love to hear all about your sweet pups. Well, we've come to the part of the episode where I get to talk about my dogs. So if you haven't already grabbed your projects, buckle up. Here we go. I have attached my microphone to my sweater so I have two hands to hold cute puppies. So this is Marcelo Eugene. I adopted Marcelo almost 7 years ago. Oh, hi, sweet baby. Are you so sleepy? Marcelo is a rescue dog from Houston, Texas, which is an accidental theme in my life, as you will soon discover. So Marcelo was found running around the streets of Houston oh, did you just burp? It's like you don't know you're on camera. For a very long time, I have not wanted human children, and having a dog felt way too close to that until one day where I felt a little opening of my heart. I went on to Pet Finder. I saw Marcelo. I just knew. I knew that that was my dog. I knew that that face needed to be mine. I don't know what my life would be like without these two. They're just such a huge part of it. I try and take them to as many places as possible, and they get a lot of love. Do you want to go lay back down? Oh, what do you think I was going to say? Love you. This is Benny. His full name is Bernard Vincent. I'm not sure how we got to Benny from there. He has many nicknames, but those are his 2 legal names. So Bennie is also a rescue from Houston, Texas. During the pandemic, Marcelo just seemed really bummed because we were still at the point where it was like if we're outside walking around, we were masked up. And if somebody was coming towards us on the same side of the street, we would cross the street. And Marcelo is very social. So he would go to the office with me all the time when I worked at the agency, etc. And I could just tell that he was really bummed that like we didn't have any other dogs to hang out with and we weren't hanging out with other people. And I had been thinking, okay, maybe it's time to get a second dog. And so I did the thing again and I went on Pet Finder, and Bennie's face, I knew that he was my dog too. It's like this gut feeling that I got. Bennie was a puppy. Him and his mom and his brothers and sisters were found by the side of the road. And he was just this blonde, fluffy thing bounding through grass. And he was so happy and adorable. And I knew that I needed to adopt him. Bennie has been with me since July of 2020. And he is just a ball of personality. You've probably heard him yelling on other podcast episodes. But right now he's very calm because he's tired. These are my 2 babies. Rescue animals are so precious, and there's so many in this world that need love, and I wish that I could adopt more, but I need to put the brakes on 2 at this point in time. Speaking of these dogs, I need to take them outside. You want to go on walkies? Okay, we can do it. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for watching. I can talk to other people and learn about them for a very long time. I didn't know how this would go, but I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe I'll do more of these. If you have a question for me, feel free to drop it in the comments below or send me an email at hq@makingco.com. And maybe if I do one of these podcast episodes again, I will answer your question. Make sure to subscribe. And if you're feeling generous at all, or if you love this podcast and you want to help support it, my Ko-fi, whatever it's called, link is down below. I do this for the love of community. So yeah, if you want to help keep this podcast going, that link is down below. And make sure you share with your maker friends. I really appreciate you. Happy making, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, guys. Do you want to go outside? Do you want your walkies? Let's do it. Do you want your walkies? Come on. Yeah, let's go. Okay, bye.